Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2, Text 20, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, founder Acharya of ISKCON. There is no time for that. Okay. Evam prasanna manaso bhagavad bhakti yogataha bhagavat tattva vijnanam mukta sangasya jayate. Thus established in the mode of unalloyed goodness, the man whose mind has been enlivened by contact with devotional service to the Lord gains positive scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead in the stage of liberation from all material association. Purport: in the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that out of many thousands of ordinary men, one fortunate man endeavors for perfection in life. Many men are conducted by the modes of passion and ignorance, and thus they are engaged always in lust, desire, hankerings, ignorance, and sleep. Out of many such man-like animals, there is actually a man who knows the responsibility of human life and thus tries to make life perfect by following the prescribed duties. And out of many thousands of such persons who have thus attained success in human life, one may know scientifically about the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. In the same Bhagavad Gita, it is also said that scientific knowledge of Sri Krishna is understood only by the process of devotional service, Bhakti Yoga. The very same thing is confirmed herein in the above words. No ordinary man, or even one who has attained success in human life, can know scientifically or perfectly the personality of Godhead. Perfection of human life is attained when one can understand that he is not the product of matter, but is in fact spirit. And as soon as one understands that he has nothing to do with matter, he at once ceases his material hankerings and becomes enlivened as a spiritual being. This attainment of success is possible when one is above the modes of passion and ignorance, or in other words, when one is actually a Brahmana by qualification. A Brahmana is the symbol of Sattva Gun, or the mode of goodness, and others who are not in the mode of goodness are either Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras, or less than the Shudras. The Brahminical stage is the highest stage of human life because of its good qualities. So one cannot be a devotee unless one at least qualifies as a Brahmana. The devotee is already a Brahmana by action, but that is not the end of it. As referred to above, such a Brahmana has to become a Vaishnava, in fact, to be actually in the transcendental stage. A pure Vaishnava is a liberated soul and is transcendental even to the position of a Brahmana. In the material stage, even a Brahmana is also a conditioned soul, because although in the Brahminical stage the concept of Brahman or transcendence is realized, scientific knowledge of the Supreme Lord is lacking. One has to surpass the Brahminical stage and reach the Vasudeva stage to understand the personality of Godhead, Krishna. The science of the personality of Godhead is the subject matter for study by the postgraduate students in the spiritual line. Foolish men, or men with a poor fund of knowledge, do not understand the Supreme Lord, and they interpret Krishna according to their respective whims. The fact is, however, that one cannot understand the science of the personality of Godhead unless one is freed from the contamination of the material modes, even up to the stage of a Brahmana. When a qualified Brahmana factually becomes a Vaishnava, in the enlivened state of liberation, he can know what is actually the personality of Godhead. Evam prasanna manaso bhagavat bhakti yogataha bhagavat tattva vijnanam mukta sangasya jayate. Thus established in the mode of unalloyed goodness, the man whose mind has been enlivened by contact with devotional service to the Lord gains positive scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead in the stage of liberation from all material association. Now in this verse, it's referred to Bhagavat Tattva Vijnanam, means specific knowledge of the personality of Godhead, and everything related with Him. Actually, if we are to understand God, we have to understand everything in relation to Him also. It's not enough simply to say, I love God, or I believe in Jesus, or simply make some slogan. As Srila Prabhupada often used to say, it's not even sufficient to say that God is great, but one should know how God is great. And factually, one can understand God fully if one knows the science of God. That means to know how God relates to everything else. What is the difference between God and everything else? And what is the sameness between God and everything else? Both things are there. So the basic subject of the science of God is to understand Him, God, to understand the living beings, to understand material nature, to understand time, and to understand how the living beings are incarcerated in this in this material world, and thus receive body after body according to their karmic activities. Now, this is basic knowledge of the science of God, by knowing which one can become liberated from material contamination. First of all, we have to understand what material contamination is. What is desirable? What is not desirable? In the modern age, there's a kind of propaganda due to latent impersonalism that everything's okay. If it feels good, do it. This is dog's philosophy. The dog, if he thinks something feels good, he does it. But human life means to discriminate what should be done and what should not be done. According to Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, those who make no such discrimination are called demons. Pravritim cha, nivritim cha, janana vidurasaraha. Those who are demoniac, they do not know what is proper behavior and what is improper. Therefore, they naturally tend towards that which is improper, because the conditioned soul is inclined towards sinful life, especially meat-eating, gambling, intoxication, and illicit sex. So without any control, without even distinguishing between what is proper and improper, let alone making endeavors to control that by following religious principles, religious regulative principles, then naturally he falls down to the lowest condition. But knowledge of scriptures here is given, Bhagavat Tattva Vijnana, scientific knowledge of God. That means knowledge which is revealed in the scripture, scriptural knowledge. The scriptural knowledge is that which is given by God so that we can understand Him. Here's another foolish idea. One foolish idea is to reject the existence of God. Another foolish idea is not to take it very importantly or not even to think about it. These are atheism and agnosticism. Then when we come to the field of supposed theism, there are many foolish ideas also. People who say, I believe in God in my own way, for instance. But there's no way of believing God. I think God is like this. In my opinion, God is like this. These are all ridiculous, farcical statements. I think God is like this, as if God has to be as you want Him to be, or you think Him to be. I think God is like this. Tomorrow, I changed my opinion, so now God has to change. I believe in Jesus, now I believe in Islam, so now God has to change because I changed my opinion. This is all foolishness. One has to understand God as He is. Even any material object you can't understand simply in your own way. I think this steel lotus is actually made out of wood and it's green. It's my opinion. It's a democratic country. You can think what you like. You can think what you like, but if it's not a fact, then it's foolishness. That's why this statement is given, Bhagavat Tattva Vijnana, scientific knowledge. As Prabhupada explains, you can read at the beginning of Perfect Questions, Perfect Answers. A scientist is one who knows things as they are, not simply one who observes, speculates, and comes to all nonsensical conclusions. But he should know actually what is the fact. That's why Prabhupada often likes to say that Krishna consciousness is not a religion in the way that religion is normally conceived, but it is a science. Science inasmuch as we have to know things as they are. Religion is defined in the dictionary as a kind of faith, but simply to have a kind of faith is not very helpful if one believes the wrong thing. You can be very sincerely believing, I am God, or some other strange idea, But if it's not true, however much you believe it, it's not going to make it true, any more than my believing that this is wooden and painted green is true, because it's not. So fact is fact, and the fact of the science of God is given by God in Shastra. As Prabhupada explained, just like when you, for instance, if you buy a microphone, there is a booklet which comes with the microphone which explains what is the purpose and how to use it. So the Vedic directions, they explain what is the purpose of the universe, what is our purpose, what are we doing here, and what is the ultimate goal of human life. This should be inquired into. What is the ultimate goal of life? That is the mission of human life. To understand what is the goal of life, ultimately that comes to the point of understanding Bhagavat Tattva Vijnana. That means specific knowledge of the science of God. In this way, the Bhagavat culture, or the culture of Krishna consciousness, is distinguished from ordinary religious processes. Prabhupada said that Krishna consciousness is not an ordinary religion, it is an education in the science of God. One has to be educated to know what is my position, what is God's position, how to act in that position, how to relate to the world, understanding it to be the world of God. How is it made? What are we doing here? How do we get out of it? That we should get out of it. Those who don't have specific knowledge of the science of God, they are mostly thinking that this world is very nice. Or we will go to, by the blessings of God, we will go to heaven, which is something like this world with all the bad things taken out, just like income tax and going to work. Heaven, just like there was one of the greatest theologians, Christian theologians of this outgoing century, C.S. Lewis, was English. So his idea of heaven, he gave his idea of heaven, that it's something like England. It's just like England. You see, what foolishness. Such a hellish place. As Prabhupada used to say that, they used to say the sun never sets on the British Empire, but I went to England and I saw the sun never shines on England. Once Prabhupada was called on a TV, you know these TV shows, do you have them in Croatia, where they try to, the interviewer tries to make you look like a fool and gives you all these questions and tries to screw you. So his first question was, do you believe in hell? Because mostly non-religious people think believing in hell is stupid. Prabhupada said, yes, this England is just like hell. Finished him off immediately. And the sun never comes out, it's always cloudy and cold, and the man is just devastated. So the man said, but it's to your credit that you made such a magnificent civilization in such a horrible place. So, specific knowledge of the science of God, that is required. Education. Now in our movement, very good. More and more there is educational programs to study Srila Prabhupada's books, which give knowledge of the science of God, not simply sentimental. I believe God is like this. Jesus is good shepherd taking out the sheep, and every so often we'll cut the sheep's throat and eat one because we're all meat eaters. They think Jesus is a meat eater, so they have all these funny ideas. But who actually is God? That you cannot understand by a so-called logical process. Those who try even to study the Shastra by the mundane academic method, they cannot understand, because this is revealed knowledge. Evam prasanna manaso bhagavad bhakti yogataha. This knowledge can be understood by those who practice Krishna consciousness. It is a closed book. That's an English idiom. It's a closed book. It means if the book is closed, you can't get any knowledge out of it. So you may read the book, but if your heart is not open to Krishna, if you don't follow the process of Bhakti Yoga, you can study these books. You can become an expert. You can quote inside out, upside down, all the Shastra. But if you don't develop a sense of Bhakti Yoga, devotion to Krishna, by following the regulated principles of devotional service, you won't understand a single word. And that we see there are many academics, academicians, as Prabhupada used to say. who they study Shastra, but their aim is to deprecate Shastra. They're envious. The whole group, beginning with Max Muller and company, their whole idea was simply to study the Shastra with the idea of showing that actually it's all nonsense. That was their idea. This is how Indology began, and it's still going on in the universities. You can study Indology, South Asian studies, and all these things. And you'll find people, they go very deeply into studying the different branches of the Vedas, or Gauriya Vaishnav culture, or whatever they're studying, but they don't understand anything. In fact, they're extremely envious. By their study, instead of becoming closer to Krishna, they go further away from Krishna, because they're approaching in the wrong way. That Krishna is they have to have a job, so they could have got a degree, they could have been a professor of history, or they could have been a professor of biology, but they're a professor of Vaishnavism. And they study it as if it's something simply to be studied to make a job, so they can get enough money for their eating, sleeping, mating and defending. So in the universities you have to follow the academic paradigm. So first of all you have to take it as that Vyasa has written something. Vyasa, well, did he exist or not? That's the first question. That's a big thing. And then whether he existed or not. And then maybe there were so many different authors, and then someone invented that there was some Vyasa and they threw it all together. And actually the Srimad Bhagavatam is written by Bopadev in about the 13th century, because it couldn't have been written before the Bible. And it couldn't have been written 5,000 years ago, because there wasn't any civilization in England at the time. So how could there have been any civilization in India? Because in the Western countries, especially England, of course, and America has become the big brother of England, so there couldn't have been any civilization. Just stretches across the Atlantic Ocean and goes a little bit into Germany and Italy and Croatia. Croatia, who ever heard of that? I mean, they're somewhat civilized as much as they have nowadays. We're helping them by sending them McDonald's and IBM, and in this way we're civilizing the world by giving them all the real benefits of modern life. But this Vyasadeva, even if he did exist, it must have been quite recently, and they, by their scholarly analysis, they discover so many things, and in this way they remain contemptuous. They have no respect for the Shastra, and in this way they go to hell. So we have to study Shastra from those who are faithful followers of the Shastra. Those who are not only faithful followers, but Tattvadarshi. Those who have, by following the process given in Shastra, by following the process of Bhakti Yoga, they have not only studied, but they have become realized. Study is one thing, realization is something else. Generally, realization follows study, as described in these verses here. It is possible, simply by chanting Hare Krishna, to attain all perfection in life. But generally one needs guidance by one who is expert in understanding the principles of Bhakti Yoga, who is a Bhakti Yoga scientist, who has understood the science of Bhakti. Generally we need guidance to overcome the anarthas in our heart, because we don't recognize them. We don't personally recognize them. Therefore we need guidance by those who know the principles of Shastra, who know how this science works. When we talk about this, just like you have a chemical factory, so it's required that there are expert chemical engineers who know how the process works, so that when you start off with certain products, raw materials, and at the end of the complex chemical process you produce various goods such as polyesters, nylons, and so on. Now, if the process is not set up properly, if the person who's making the factory or designing the factory doesn't know the process properly, then it won't work. And even you have to have such people present, you have to have them on site, because at any time something can go wrong. So it's required an expert who can make the necessary adjustment. Maybe the boiler got overheated, or the quality of raw materials is not good enough, or you're heating something for too long, or there are so many different factors in complex chemical reactions. There are so many different factors which, if not controlled precisely, will result in a different product being produced. For instance, we often find, it's very common in India, that you read in the newspaper that so many people died from drinking spurious liquor, as it's called, hooch. That means that if you buy the liquor from government shops, you have to pay tax. That means home-produced whiskey or gin or something like that. But if you buy it from someone who just makes it in their backyard, it's much cheaper. The thing is, with the stuff that's made in the backyard, often it's not made very carefully. So instead of getting pure ethyl alcohol, you'll get varieties of methanol and worse. So you end up in the newspaper having drunk it. So the point is that this is only a simple chemical reaction, this distillation of alcohol, what to speak of more complex ones. So similarly, when we're dealing with the conditioned souls, or when we are ourselves taking to Krishna consciousness, we are basically quite complex living beings, because although we are by nature pure, we are covered by Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moha, Mada, Matsarya. That means lust, anger, greed, envy, illusion, madness, and therefore we can't recognize who we are or what we're supposed to be doing. We are in illusion. So by definition, someone who is in illusion, just like someone who's tied up, cannot free themselves. It requires someone who is free and who knows how to undo the knots, who can release us. And even after becoming freed, we have to know what we're supposed to do after becoming freed. It's like we see there are impersonalists, they also talk about becoming, here we see the word mukta sangasya jayati. They also believe in becoming mukta or liberated. Prabhupada said that actually between the Vaishnavas and the impersonalists, there's no difference up to the point of liberation. In other words, we both accept Shastra, we both accept that we have to become liberated, we both accept that this material entanglement is a cause of suffering. There are so many things we have in common. We accept the Vedic culture, protection of cows, so many different things. But what is the nature of liberation? That is the difference between the impersonalists and the devotees, because the impersonalists, they think that the perfection of life is to merge into the impersonal absolute or to become ourselves God. Whereas the devotees, the devotional scholars, they know that real liberation, vimukti, that means not just mukti but vimukti, full or established liberation. That means to engage in the service of the transcendent Lord, Yato Bhaktir Adhokshaje, the transcendent Lord, without any personal motive, and thus enter into his abode to serve him in any one of 4 different rasas, or 4, or sometimes it's 5 different rasas. So it is required, guidance is required. So guidance means it has to be a very expert person. Just like a doctor, they have to be trained. You can't just pick what does a doctor do? It's where he picks up a knife and just cuts someone. So, okay, I can be a doctor too. You get a good salary. So, why bother going to the university and studying under an expert? Just get a knife and cut someone. But the result will be that you may be given an operation, just like injection, death sentence by injection, or electric chair. Because there'll be a murderer. Instead of doing good to others, unless you're trained, unless you know how to guide others properly, you will do damage. And that we factually see in the modern age. There are so many self-proclaimed gurus who have not studied the science of God under an expert, and simply they read a book or two, they flash a smile or two, put on some saffron cloth, and declare themselves a guru. But the result is that those who follow them do not go to Krishna, they go to hell. Even on the path of devotional service, if there's a little discrepancy, then it all becomes wrong. Just like a doctor, he may be a good doctor, but if he thinks, well, I have a new special way and it's not bona fide, then he ends up killing the patients. He may be expert in so many ways, but if he makes a little mistake, a little mistake for a person in such a responsible position can be a disaster. And that happens many times, actually. There are many reports from the hospital, how from medical science, how someone went for a simple operation, like they're getting their appendix out or tonsils out, and then they get their appendix out, and then they go back and complain to the doctor, I have so much pain. Well, don't worry, it'll go away. And they come back after a week, it's terrible, the pain. And they come back after a month, and they just give some painkillers. Still not terrible, but okay, give an x-ray. Ooh, we left the scissors inside when they sewed up. So, you may be an expert, but if you may be trained, but if you're not careful and you don't follow properly, then even someone who is very expert, if he doesn't exactly follow Bhagavad Tattva Vijnana as it's given by Shastra and given by Acharyas, then he also becomes a misleader. That is also there. That's why we have to very carefully follow the Parampara system. Now, Parampara, there may be so many mysteries in Parampara. For instance, nowadays, of course, it used to be very simple. We just used to say, follow Prabhupada, whatever he says, and that's perfect, and it's still true. But nowadays, we've become very expert and learned and studied so many different books, and we've found out how, well, maybe Prabhupada was wrong, or such foolish things. Sarcasm. They've found out so many things, and we've become very complicated. And we're wondering, some people are wondering, well, is our sampradaya bona fide? And then you have to investigate in the Shastra and so many different things and make so many big theses. And then if you eventually get through all of that, you finally come to understand that, well, yes, actually it is bona fide. And the effect is there. Even you can see immediately, even if you're more simple, you don't study through, so if you don't complicate your brain with so many things, you can see that obviously someone who has fulfilled the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world, and so many people are getting effect from that, then it must be bona fide. It doesn't happen by chance. We're not Darwinists. That simply by chance someone came to the West and just happened to be good luck, and all of a sudden people gave up all their bad habits which they'd had all their lives and started chanting and dancing and experiencing Krishna consciousness. So one whose brain is not overly complex, then he can see very clearly what is the fact. But those who don't have basic faith in our Sampradaya Acharyas, then they're going to get in a lot of problems. They'll study Sanskrit and say, well, this is declined this way, and therefore this translation is wrong, and it actually means this, and it actually means that. And you become a big scholar, but you get cheated of the mercy which comes down by the Sampradaya. Krishna, here it's mentioned, Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam, specific knowledge of the science of God. But that is not received simply by reading books. That has to be received through the mercy of the Guru Parampara. It's not that simply by reading many books. Not that I'm against reading books. No, that's not being stated. This whole section of Bhagavatam is recommending that one should understand the science of God, but we should also know how to understand the science of God by receiving it properly in disciplic succession. So as I was saying, now in our society, there are more and more educational programs which are based on Prabhupada's books, which are meant for giving devotees the knowledge by which they can understand our constitutional position. We are all servants of Krishna. How we can continue to act in that position despite the many allurements of Maya. Often it is seen that people take to devotional service with great enthusiasm, but after some time, maybe after getting initiated, maybe even after getting Brahman initiated, maybe even after getting sannyas initiated, they go away from devotional service being deluded by the attractions of Maya. So, how to defend from that? That's the commonly asked question. How to overcome lust? It's the big question everyone has. What is the big enemy? Nitya Vairanam, Krishna says in Gita. Our eternal enemy is lust. Eternal means as long as we're not fully situated in Krishna consciousness, as long as we're not vimukti sangha, mentioned in this verse, as long as we're not liberated from material attraction, then ipso facto, we must have material attraction. And material attraction it all comes from envy of Krishna. But that love of Krishna becomes perverted as lusty desires. And from those lusty desires come all the other contaminations, greed, anger, and so on. Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moha, Mada, Matsarya. So, how to defend ourselves from this? A higher taste is required. Ultimately, when one has the higher taste of Krishna consciousness, he can overcome all material attractions. But we also find in Gita that Krishna recommends that by knowing who we are, knowing our constitutional position, and then acting with intelligence, we should overcome lust. Knowledge is required, and the intelligence is required, having the knowledge the knowledge is there, then using that knowledge to discriminate between what should be done and what should not be done. And to keep our intelligence firm and pure and fixed, it is required to follow the process of Bhakti Yoga very carefully. That means we have to know what is in Prabhupada's books and apply that in our lives by regularly following the process of sadhana, associating with devotees. So this point is being stressed in this verse, and actually in the whole series of verses prior to this, how one should have knowledge of the science of Krishna. That specifically, this is the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, specifically the science of the knowledge of God as is given in Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is the magnum opus of Vyasadeva. He compiled it in his maturity, the one book which gives detailed knowledge of the science of God. That is given in Bhagavad Gita in concise form, but in expanded form that is given in Srimad Bhagavatam. Everything we need to know for becoming perfect. Plus, on top of that, the pastimes of Krishna in his various incarnations are given in Srimad Bhagavatam. From studying Srimad Bhagavatam, we can understand what the goal of life is and how to attain it. How to attain it is even more specifically and categorically explained in the Nectar of Devotion. And what that goal of life, prema, prayojana, our goal of life is love of Krishna. So the relishable subject matter for Paramahamsas is also in Srimad Bhagavatam. That is the pastimes of Krishna. So everything is there, as Srila Prabhupada used to say, everything is in my books. Of course, Krishna consciousness is unlimited. So Prabhupada said that my disciples will also write purports to my books, because although everything is in Prabhupada's books, there's the matter of excavating the subject matter, seeing it from different angles of vision, relishing that subject matter. So this, again getting to the point, education, it is essential for devotees to very much help them to remain fixed on the path of devotional service, to go very deeply into this philosophy of Krishna consciousness. That means by studying by becoming a faithful scholar, not by becoming a pseudo-academic, mundane scholar, finding so-called mistakes in Prabhupada's books and going to hell, but by studying Srila Prabhupada's books very carefully, with the understanding that this knowledge is given by Vyasadeva, given by Krishna through Vyasadeva, and delivered in the Parampara system. Srila Prabhupada often compared himself, the job of a guru is to be like a postman. He delivers that which is already there. Of course, each acharya adds his own realization, not that he goes outside the realizations of others. If he goes outside the Parampara system of knowledge, then he becomes bogus. But rather he, just like it's described, Shukadeva Goswami, Shukamakad Amrita Drava Sangyutam. The Bhagavatam became even more relishable by being presented by Shukadeva Goswami. So this subject matter of Srimad Bhagavatam, when we're saying study, is not like studying some boring, dry, mundane, frustrating subject in the university. But rather this subject is the subject which connects us to Krishna. Soul to soul. Our soul to the Supreme Soul, Krishna. Because Bhagavatam is non-different from Krishna. So by entering deeply into this Bhagavat Tattva Vijnana, science of the knowledge of God, we can solidify our position in devotional service, please Krishna, because Krishna is pleased, when we study Srimad Bhagavatam. And by going deeply into Krishna consciousness, that means by having this knowledge of Krishna consciousness, then we can relish the subject of Krishna more and more and more. Bhagavatam is relishable. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he is the personification of Srimad Bhagavatam. He is both relishing Bhagavatam and he is Bhagavat. He is Bhagavan. He is both Bhagavan and Bhagavat. He is both God and devotee. And he was relishing this subject matter. He declared that among the 5 processes of devotional service, this studying of Bhagavatam in the association of devotees is most important. He accepted Srimad Bhagavatam as Pramanam Amalam. It is the topmost spotless Pramana, as stated in Bhagavatam itself, that it is Puranam Amalam, it is the spotless Purana, and therefore Vaishnavanam Priyam, it is very dear to the Vaishnavas, because it explains Yasmin Paramahamsya Mekam Amalam Jnanam Param Giyate. It describes the topmost knowledge of Krishna, which is relishable by Paramahamsas. So this Bhagavatam is meant for both the neophyte devotees who aspire to be Paramahamsas and those who actually attain the position of Paramahamsas by following the Bhagavat process. They relish Srimad Bhagavatam. So even in the beginning stages, Srimad Bhagavatam is most relishable. When we say Bhagavatam, that of course includes Bhagavad Gita, and the postgraduate study of Srimad Bhagavatam is the Chaitanya Charitamrita, in which the rasa, which is advertised at the beginning of Bhagavatam, Pibata Bhagavata Rasa Mamala, this is advertised, that drink this juice of Bhagavatam, this nectar, the rasa, Bhagavata rasa. So that juice of the Srimad Bhagavatam is in concentrated form in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Therefore Prabhupada, who took so much trouble to translate these books, simply asked that we also take the trouble to study them, especially these 4 books, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and Nectar of Devotion, so that by entering into this ocean, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the ocean of nectarine exchanges in devotional service, that we can also become Bhagavatas, pure devotees of Krishna. Hare Krishna. So if there are 1 or 2 questions I could take. Please.
You said that even a small discrepancy can have serious consequences. So if we look at the history of ISKCON, we can see many even bigger discrepancies. So how can we be sure that we are still on the right track?
Was the question translated? Did you hear the question? Oh, you have the mic, okay. Well, yes, therefore I was saying we should become educated. If we know the science of Krishna, then we won't be deviated. If we know what is the fact, just like if our guru tells us to start taking LSD, it's happened in our movement. Some of his followers followed, but those who understood the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, they didn't. So education is required. We have to know the science of Krishna. It was after he left. That was 2 questions. Actually, we have to. I was asking Dayalu Prabhu, I have up to 9 o'clock is the outside limit for this class. Actually 8:45, but you can always stretch it a bit. Because we have to, otherwise everything becomes later and later. And then those who have seminars at the end of the day, they find there's no time for it. Or it becomes later and later and it goes up till 12 o'clock at night and then no one comes to Mangalarti. Well, you can say 24 hours, but if you're on that platform, it's very nice. But we have 6 or 7 days, so that's more than 120 hours. So it's better to recognize that we need to sleep and eat and all these things and then take rest early and rise for Mangalarti, isn't it? Because that is Mangala, it's auspicious. During the Brahma Muhurta, the most important time of day for God realization. So, if you want to stay up all night, you can, but then you should also come to Mangalarti. There was another question?
How can we know who is the realized person?
How can you know who is a realized person? Well, how can you know anything about anybody? How can you know who is a good footballer? He has certain abilities to kick a ball, run, shoot, so many different things. So, a self-realized person is known by his symptoms, which are given in Shastra. In Nectar of Devotion, the symptoms of one in ecstatic love have been given. That one is very tolerant of material circumstances, doesn't like to waste time, is very attached to chanting Krishna's names, likes to reside in a holy place, likes to associate with. So there are different symptoms. It's very important to understand these symptoms, because if someone is simply labeled as a self-realized person but isn't, then he'll impose his non-self-realization on us in the name of self-realization. So you should understand the symptoms from Shastra. Hare Krishna. I'll finish there. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.